Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now we will study the words of my perfect teacher. In the words of my perfect teacher, we are now teaching the meditation on boundless compassion. Yesterday we discussed how Jetsun Milarepa encountered 5 ugly spirits in his mountain cave who created obstacles for him, but later he subdued these ghosts and spirits through his practice. Today we have a similar story. Once Milarepa was requested by some patrons in Yalung Tsama to reside there, but later, following his guru's instructions, he decided he must go to Lingpa Rock to that cave for retreat practice. During the process of practice, once when he was, it seems, one evening, while he was practicing from the cracks in the rocks, he heard some crackling sounds. Going closer to look, he saw a sphere of light. Inside the light sphere was a red-colored person riding a deer. In front was a beautiful woman leading the deer as they approached. After arriving, it appeared that the red person deliberately bumped into Jetsun Milarepa. After the collision, the red person and deer vanished like a gust of wind. The beautiful woman transformed into a female dog. This female dog bit Milarepa's big toe and would not let go. Then Jetsun Milarepa began to sing to it about how the 4 directions are all extremely auspicious, how he practices in the mountains observing his own mind, and that it would be best for you not to disturb me, and so forth. Probably some Vajra songs related to the Mahamudra realizations mentioned earlier after this song was finished. Actually, what had appeared was a Rakshasi, and the Rakshasi in turn sang a song to him. In this song she said the following: habitual demon arises from the mind. If you don't know the mind's true nature, though you try to drive me away, I won't go. If you haven't realized the emptiness of your own mind, demons like me are countless. She said that originally, from one's own habitual tendencies, all demon hosts arise from one's own habitual patterns. If a person doesn't know that their mind's essence is pure and luminous, then when you tell me to leave, to go away, I, this demoness, this Rakshasi, will not leave. If you don't know that I am a manifestation of your own mind's nature, and that the mind's nature is completely empty and luminous before attaining this realization, not only me, but countless multitudes of demons exist. If you have recognized your mind's nature, all obstacles appear as companions. I, the Rakshasi, will also become your servant. If you recognize your own mind's nature, all external obstacles, demonic conditions, and adverse circumstances all appear as supportive conditions and companions. Moreover, though I, the Rakshasi, am originally very fierce, but because as a yogi, when he realizes all phenomena as manifestations of his own mind, its magical display, I, the Rakshasi, will in the future also become your retinue. So in this song, recognizing the mind's true nature means that in our daily life, whether we encounter happiness or suffering, or any other kind of obstacles, when you truly rest in the luminosity of mind's nature, actually everything is beyond words. There's a scriptural citation that Khenpo Kiwang used to frequently quote, "Know all appearances as deities, ghosts, and spirits naturally listen." If we know that all appearances and existence are actually pure manifestations of deities, then ghosts, spirits, and everything in the world all merge into unity. There's also this teaching. So for us as practitioners, applying this in daily life is extremely important. Some individuals have already received empowerments of the Supreme Great Perfection and have also received Pith instructions on the Great Perfection, Mahamudra, and other Tantric teachings. Some may have long-term realization from Zen practice. When you encounter actual adverse circumstances or some unpleasant situations, you should merge all these unpleasant phenomena into primordial awareness. When observing their essence, there's nothing at all, yet not empty void. This clear luminosity is inexpressible. This state can be called the union of appearance and emptiness. Guru Rinpoche would often, when encountering rather vexing matters or when many external unpleasant phenomena appeared, advise his disciples that in such situations and atmospheres one should rest one's mind in its natural state. When resting in the natural state, indeed, on one hand, all external adverse circumstances that rise and fall like waves all merge into the boundless ocean of natural, luminous awareness. At the same time, for yogis and those with meditative realization, their various aspects of practice power increasingly advance. Actually, true practitioners find that all their actions, all places, and all times are all opportunities for practice. There's no need for separate retreat, closing doors, or dedicating specific time for special practice. Listening to teachings is practice, carrying water is practice, riding in vehicles is practice, speaking is also practice. But for us beginners, reaching such a state is quite difficult. It's just that in our daily life, truly sometimes, people will always encounter things they feel are unfair. Actually, the whole world is not necessarily unfair. If the world were unfair, one's mind wouldn't necessarily have such afflictions. But sometimes our conceptual thinking occasionally generates various afflictions and suffering at such times in the nature that your Vajra Guru once pointed out to you, you can directly abide. And at that time, whether it's the appearance of external demons, ghosts and spirits, or enemies, or various frightening afflictions and suffering arising in one's own thoughts, all of these are like rainwater falling from the sky, falling abundantly into a pond, merging as one. When merged as one, this state is indescribably wonderful. As a yogi, one should apply the deeper realizations one has cultivated to actual daily life. At that time, Milarepa also merged into such a state in front of the Rakshasi. Because he had just sung the Mahamudra realization song, even the Rakshasi already understood, and she released the master and received refuge and precepts in front of Milarepa. The next day, she brought all her retinue to receive teachings in front of Milarepa. From then on, she vowed on one hand not to do anything harmful to sentient beings, and simultaneously vowed that in the future, in this place or in various places, she would help all connected practitioners and spread the Dharma, making this promise. The entire story is in the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa. When convenient, you can also read it yourselves. Later indeed, the Rakshasi and all her retinue became Milarepa's servants. One can see that, without the firm understanding that ghosts and spirits are manifestations of one's own mind, how could one possibly subdue ghosts and spirits through hatred? From this we can completely understand that using hatred to retaliate would not only fail to subdue ghosts and spirits, but on the contrary, they might become even more rampant. There's this danger. So when we encounter enemies or ghosts and spirits in our daily life, on one hand use great compassion, practice Tonglen, practice Chod, or be sustained by the wisdom of emptiness. If you have higher tantric realization, of course apply such view. In this way, whether during solitary practice or in the process of teaching and benefiting beings, all kinds of disastrous phenomena will completely disappear. This is also an extremely profound Pith instruction for our daily life. There is another point worth mentioning. In today's times, some lamas and monks, when they go to patrons' homes, those patrons slaughter many sheep and offer meat. Yet these lamas and monks have not the slightest concern, but rather begin eating with cheerful faces. At that time, indeed in the Tibetan areas, there were some individual monks whose conduct was also improper. Some patrons, in order to invite certain lamas, would first slaughter sheep and then invite the lamas. Yet the lamas not only failed to generate compassion for them, clearly knowing that when they come to the home, it is harmful to sentient beings, but they gladly go. Very few. I hear even Buddhists, for instance, going to restaurants to eat and ordering fresh kills. Clearly these monastics know this, but they don't care at all and gladly go. In such cases, not to mention in the Mahayana, even in the Theravada, the verses on the Mula Sarvastivada Vinaya also says, if one has seen, heard, or suspects, one should not consume this meaning, one should not eat it. Why? For the sake of compassion for sentient beings. The verses on the Mula Sarvastivada Vinaya contains this. We often speak of the three pure meats, what one has seen, heard, or suspects was killed for oneself. the meat of all these sentient beings should absolutely not be consumed. Why? Because these sentient beings are very pitiful. For practitioners, including those of the Shravaka vehicle, not harming sentient beings is the most fundamental principle. Therefore, we should understand if others invite us to such meat feasts and we very joyfully begin to consume them. This is extremely unreasonable, especially when performing rituals for averting disasters, extending life, making offerings for blessings, and so forth. They say fresh meat must be used and believe that just slaughtered, blood-dripping, steaming hot meat is clean, using bloody meat to decorate and beautify ritual cakes and offerings, performing Buddhist ceremonies with aggressive, murderous intent. Actually, this is merely the sorcery of burn and other non-Buddhist heterodox paths. Such practices are absolutely not the methods of inner Buddhist teaching. At that time in the Tibetan areas, there were also some people who used impure blood and meat, believing this was fresh offering. Previously, at that time, in very few places in Tibetan areas, the traditions were indeed quite bad, and now very few people have some criticisms of Tibetan Buddhism. Actually, if this is truly so, what they say also has validity. If it has validity, whether you study Tibetan Buddhism or study anything else, one should not get angry. Indeed, some behaviors they mention are unreasonable, including now in Han regions. In some southern places they offer fish, pork, and other meat to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. I even heard that sometimes during festivals they kill chickens and sheep for sacrificial offerings. There are such practices. Non-Buddhists and the Blackburn of that time indeed also had such blood and meat offerings. Blackburn and the non-Buddhist Mahesvara school also frequently do this. In places like Nepal and India, there are some non-Buddhists who, whenever festivals arrive, kill some lives to offer to their deities. In such cases, this practice is completely identical. If we follow the principles of inner Buddhist teaching, then after taking refuge, one must abandon actions that harm sentient beings. No matter where one goes, even if it endangers the life of a single sentient being, one cannot cause harm. Killing and consuming blood and meat completely violates the refuge vows of Buddhism, as stated in the Sutra of Repaying the Kindness of the Buddha. Even if bodhisattvas lose their own lives, they will never wrongfully take another's life. If bodhisattvas encounter even life-threatening danger, at that time, taking the lives of other sentient beings is indeed not in accordance with Mahayana teachings. In Mahayana Buddhism, as everyone knows, we can give up our precious lives, but actually, killing sentient beings is absolutely unreasonable. Moreover, it says here that after we take refuge, we abandon harming sentient beings. We know that after taking refuge in the Buddha, we abandon association with non-Buddhists after taking refuge in the Dharma. We abandon harming sentient beings, and after taking refuge in the Sangha, we cannot collaborate with others who hold wrong views. Therefore, the Mahaparinirvana Sutra also teaches those who take refuge in the Dharma are freed from killing. We've cited this before, right? Those who take refuge in the Dharma must definitely stay away from all actions of killing sentient beings. Therefore, everyone should consider our current daily life, including some lay practitioners in Han regions who indeed sometimes cannot completely abstain from meat. This is related to work, family, and some bad habits from the past. But to be very open about it, thinking it doesn't matter with this attitude, and even inviting some great masters proclaiming in front of many people, "Oh, one can eat meat." Tibetan Buddhism allows meat eating. Han Buddhism prohibits meat eating, pretending to understand when ignorant and beginning to widely promote this in front of many people. Such practice is extremely unreasonable. Actually, regarding the teachings, as I've mentioned before indeed, according to Mahayana Buddhism, there is never a time when meat eating is permitted. It's just that when sentient beings' own spiritual capacity and cultivation don't reach that level, many behaviors incompatible with Buddhism will be performed. This is not Buddhist doctrine, but rather the faults of us individuals. Especially as Mahayana practitioners, one should rightfully become the refuge and protector for all limitless sentient beings. Mahayana practitioners, from the moment we generate bodhicitta, we all become the refuge and protector for all sentient beings. Suppose toward those karmic sentient beings who should be protected, there isn't the slightest compassion, and when patrons kill these sentient beings who are the objects of protection, they place the cooked blood and meat in front of the savior bodhisattva, and that person also joyfully begins to eat and drink heartily, and from time to time makes burping sounds. Could there be anything more heartbreaking than this? You should be the protector of all sentient beings. But this protector of sentient beings not only fails to protect them, but when sentient beings' blood and meat are offered to him, he also gladly enjoys their blood and meat. If protectors harm, who can rescue? If fire burns in water, who can extinguish? This is what Mipham Rinpoche taught in The Just King. If even protectors harm these sentient beings, then who can rescue them? If your refuge place deceives you or harms you, then who can rescue you? For instance, if fire has already ignited in water, normally when fire starts, we pour water on it, we can pour 1 or 2 buckets of water, and in this way the fire can be extinguished. I heard that once in a city someone was burning incense offerings on a high-rise building. The fire department was afraid it would catch fire and didn't dare go up, so they started from below. Water should be the antidote to fire, but if fire burns in water, there's no way. So the protector of all sentient beings is the bodhisattva. If the bodhisattva starts eating meat and harming sentient beings, then in this way, the great compassionate bodhicitta is completely severed. Those who eat meat sever the seed of great compassion. This should be taught in the Lankavatara Sutra. Those who eat the blood and meat of sentient beings indeed sever the great compassionate bodhicitta. Therefore, we particularly rejoice in the conduct of many great masters of Chinese Buddhism, and also some lay practitioners who basically, although in their daily life there may be many inconveniences and difficulties, begin vegetarian diets and live very pure lives. Actually, vegetarian diet indeed has great benefits for longevity and health in all aspects. Why do I say this? We often see among Zen Buddhists, especially vegetarian great masters, many live past 100 years. The reason is that vegetarian food indeed contains particularly rich nutrition. If we directly and recklessly consume the blood and meat of sentient beings, then in the blood and meat of sentient beings there are various infectious diseases, and all kinds of resentment directly and indirectly entering our bodies will definitely trigger various disease causes. Therefore, now through vegetarian diet and frequently practicing life liberation, while regularly reciting some Mahayana sutras and making good dedications, because as ordinary practitioners this is what we can accomplish, actually these actions are very meaningful. Therefore, practitioners should not be extremely excited at the beginning, wanting to do everything, but in the end, gradually not wanting to do anything. In such cases, it indeed won't work either. Actually, we should still study and attend teachings daily. This is very important. If ordinary people do not engage with Dharma for long periods and spend all day associating only with worldly people, gradually your body and mind may be completely polluted by worldly defilements. This is extremely frightening. For us to encounter the Dharma, to encounter such teachings is extremely difficult. Yet not utilizing it is like a person who truly picked up a priceless, wish-fulfilling jewel, but later failed to use it and threw it in the toilet. Extremely regrettable. Next, it says that in the treatises of the secret Vajrayana, blood and meat offerings not following teachings violate the intent of the 8 Dakinis. We pray that the Dakinis of all realms grant forgiveness. In the Tantras, it says that blood and meat offerings not performed according to the requirements of the higher and lower Tantras in this way violate what is taught in liberation in the intermediate state through hearing about the 8 Dakinis. Dakini means female skygoer. It violates their secret intention. So we pray to the Dakinis dwelling in various realms that if we, in the process of practicing Tantric Dharma, perform some inappropriate and unreasonable actions, we confess before you and ask you to grant forgiveness. There is such a verse. Some people confidently claim that so-called blood and meat offerings according to teachings must be practiced following what is stated in the Tantric treatises. So what exactly do the Tantric treatises say? Actually they say 5 meats and 5 nectars, food and drink as outer offerings. There is this: in the Tantras, 5 meats, 5 nectars, and food and drink as outer offerings among the 3 types of offerings, outer, inner, and secret. The so-called 5 offerings are outer offerings, meaning that human flesh, horse meat, dog meat, and other 5 meats, as Tantric Samya substances, are not slaughtered for consumption, but are the 5 pure meats placed as offerings. This is blood and meat offering according to teachings. Many people misunderstand because in Tantra there are indeed sometimes mentioned samaya substances, especially during tsok offerings. Some such samaya substances are mentioned, but these samaya substances are not for when we, people especially want to eat meat, and when we really want to drink alcohol, you place 1 or 2 bottles of alcohol on the mandala, and then when drinking, you take it to drink. It's not like that. Like warming alcohol on a stove after blessing it, letting you drink until drunk. It's not like that. Eating meat is also not casually during tsok offerings in tantric mandalas. I hear that now some lay practitioners have daily tsok offerings as an excuse because they want to eat meat and drink alcohol, doing this daily. Also, some lamas have probably not extensively studied tantric teachings before, but just roughly heard that in tantric offerings and tsok there are 5 meats. But if it should be 5 meats like human flesh and horse meat, however dog meat, in northeast China and Han regions many places don't avoid it, they especially like to eat it, many dog meat restaurants, so they might not mind. But actually, people's attitudes may be related to traditional customs, some are related to attachment. If you truly have no attachment to anything, indeed, Chan Master Ji Gong, in his biography, displayed non-attached behavior. Such behavior also exists in Tibetan Tantra, in Han Buddhism. There are indirectly a small portion of such teachings, but not everyone can practice them. Therefore, tantric practices, whether union, subjugation, or enjoying the 5 meats and 5 nectars, all these behaviors, as explained below, offerings according to teachings are indeed acceptable, but offerings according to teachings are not what we commonly speak of, otherwise being bound by pure-impure discrimination, considering human flesh, dog meat, etc. as extremely filthy things or particularly inferior things, completely abandoning these meats, unwilling to enjoy them while for consumption, considering just slaughtered, fragrant, fat meat as clean. The 5 samayas received: viewing pure as impure, acting carelessly. This is in the confession text. The 5 samayas received when we previously taught ascertaining the 3 vows. We discussed all 5 precepts. Among them is one called viewing what is originally pure as polluted. This in samaya is a careless behavior requiring confession. What is meant by viewing pure as impure therefore completely contradicts the samaya vows received. Now, whether in Han regions or Tibetan areas, very few people completely use their own greed as the main cause, using tantric practice and behavior as an excuse to achieve their own goals. Many people do this. I hear that in some places, the reason for liking to practice Tantra is it seems that many things not allowed in Sutrayana, they can have excuses for. Actually, in Tibetan Buddhism, especially many Dharma friends present here studying Tibetan Buddhism, some for 20 to 30 years, some for over 10 years, the content you've studied and what you've encountered in truly proper and regulated monastic behavior, actually tantric behavior, on the foundation of Sutrayana is indeed permitted when reaching the highest realization. But this point would indeed exist in Sutrayana as well. It's just that in some places it's not very flourishing. Therefore, why do some sentient beings not accept some tantric behaviors now? The reason lies here. Why must Tantra be secret? Ordinary people cannot practice it. If they practice, they easily generate wrong views and misunderstandings, although they are 5 pure meats, except for those who can transform food and drink into nectar, or when used by those practicing in solitary places upon achieving realization. Other than this, if one is attached to the delicious taste of meat and goes to villages to eat recklessly, then this is called careless behavior regarding received vows, completely violating samaya vows. If tantric special samaya substances are indeed on one hand, some can transform food and drink fine wine into ordinary water, or meat into other nectars for such people, it is also permitted. Also, very few tantric rituals require special practice in solitary places. Such special practice is also allowed those with the ability to revive the killed or who have uncommon abilities for such people. It can be said there is permission. Previously, among the stories of the 84 Mahasiddhas, there was one called Godharipa. He had practiced Mahamudra and achieved realization without any attachment. Then he went to the city, where through archery he killed many birds in the sky. After killing them, he began to consume this meat. Many people in the city began to criticize him. But after he finished eating, he revived all these birds, and they flew into the sky, I remember, in the secret biography of Dokyense Yeshe Dorje as well. Once a king from a Tibetan region invited him. The king had an especially beloved pet deer, and later the master killed it. Moreover, its meat was eaten together with the retinue and queen. After eating together, when the king returned, he was very displeased. The master said, "If you're unhappy, no problem. Gather the bones and remaining meat and put them in the deer hide." Then with one crack of a whip, the deer stood up and walked away. There are indeed many such accounts. These are not mere legends. Since ancient times, many tantric practitioners and mahasiddhas in their conduct have displayed many extraordinary behaviors. When you have achieved such realization, meat and vegetables make no difference to them. Moreover, when practicing in this way, sometimes samaya substances are needed, sometimes special behaviors are required. We ordinary people need not criticize. Now, some people don't understand certain tantric behaviors. There are two types of non-understanding. One is due to excessive ignorance. There's no helping it. Another type may have slandered the Dharma or Sangha in past lives. And when this habitual tendency resurfaces, they really cannot control their speech and will continue to create negative speech karma. For these two types of people, we can do nothing. As for other true practitioners, we cannot view all tantric behaviors as false, nor can we view all behaviors as true thinking. Tantra indeed has such excellent behaviors. As long as a person goes to do them, to emulate them, to follow them, this may not necessarily be reasonable either. Therefore, why when following a guru must one first understand the guru's character, practice, and overall realization over many years? Only then is our reliance relatively reliable. Otherwise, I heard a guru came today. After arriving, immediately go follow him. This point, I think, not to mention following a guru, even relying on a business partner, probably wouldn't be done. If you're making a business partner for, say, 100,000 yen deal today, someone came whom you've basically never heard of. Others say, today someone came, I'll cooperate with him, immediately sign a contract. In such a case, wouldn't you regret it yourself? So why does the 50 verses of Guru devotion teach that one should observe the Guru for a long time? The reason lies here. Next it says that so-called pure meat. The precepts also frequently discuss 3 pure meats meat, about which one has no suspicion, hasn't seen, and hasn't heard, and where sentient beings died naturally through their own karma. Such meat can be called pure meat. Such pure meat in our tsok offerings sometimes. If there are special requirements in the ritual, you can place it. If there are no special requirements, it's unnecessary. For other offerings, especially, we generally use fruits. Things we ourselves feel are particularly clean can be offered. Otherwise, some lay practitioners are vegetarian and extremely disgusted by meat, unwilling to touch it, then, while feeling extremely nauseated, placing nauseating things on the offering table to offer to noble beings. This is unreasonable. When we discussed offerings before, if you yourself feel something is especially good, if you especially like eating meat, taking a piece of meat and saying, I'm vegetarian, I cannot eat it. But Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you can eat meat, I offer it to you. Once someone said, taking 100 yuan, Bodhisattvas, how you divide it among yourselves, you decide for yourselves. I'm too busy today, I have no way. Whoever is big among you gets the big share. Small ones get small shares. Distribute according to work. This was an offering by a certain leader. It refers to meat from animals that died naturally through their own karma or died from illness. Meat under such circumstances is also called pure meat. It's not meat slaughtered for consumption, which is what people commonly call meat from sentient beings who died through their own karma from old age, natural death, or illness we can call pure meat. Pure meat is sometimes permitted in the Theravada, but indeed not in the Mahayana. Otherwise, as peerless Dagpo Rinpoche said, placing just killed warm blood and flesh in the mandala, all wisdom noble beings would faint. Dagpo Rinpoche very clearly stated, if we place the blood and flesh of just slaughtered sentient beings in front of Buddha statues, offering them in mandalas, not only would they not be pleased, these wisdom noble beings would indeed faint in appearance. He personally described it this way. Moreover, if after invoking wisdom beings, you offer them just slaughtered blood and flesh, it's like killing a mother's child in front of her. For example, inviting a mother as a guest, then placing her killed child's flesh in front of her, we can imagine would that mother be happy? Impossible to be happy, so offering the blood and flesh of killed sentient beings indeed cannot possibly bring joy. The ornament of the Mahayana Sutras also says, Bodhisattvas contemplate sentient beings with love penetrating to the bone marrow, constantly wishing to benefit them like their only child. As bodhisattvas, they constantly cherish all sentient beings. Their compassionate love is not mere words. It can be said to be heartfelt love from the bone marrow. Worldly people often say their love for someone is such and such. There are such descriptions. But bodhisattvas truly love unconditionally. Whereas worldly people, actually much worldly love, is not true love. It's possessive love, not giving love. Oh, I consider him as mine. Once their attitude is bad, they will certainly use various means to punish them. Worldly love is like this. But bodhisattvas indeed constantly benefit all sentient beings. The method of constantly benefiting is like a mother's attitude toward her only child. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas toward all sentient beings, like a mother of an only child, are filled with loving care and mindfulness. After killing any animal beings who are driven by negative karma and lack wisdom, offering blood and flesh, the Buddhas cannot possibly be pleased. Which sutra teaches this? All beings in the three realms are my children. It seems to be the sutra on the dependent origination of the two Brahmins, white-clad and golden banner. Oh, a little louse, is it quite itchy? Injuring Buddha's child, there probably shouldn't be any. If there are, they probably aren't small, should be big ones if there are. They're also sentient beings and should be protected. Bodhisattva Shantideva said this, one whose body is entirely on fire cannot experience pleasure from desires. If sentient beings are harmed, how can Buddhas be pleased? If a person's body is completely burning with fire, then in front of them are various wonderful sense pleasures, wonderful pleasures of form, sound, smell, and taste. Happiness will not arise. Similarly, if we harm some sentient beings, all the Buddhas in the world will absolutely not be pleased. Previously in the Sumagada Sutra, there was a king who believed in non-Buddhist teachings. Later his prince married the daughter of elder Anathapindika, called Sumagada. She believed in Buddhism, and after she went to that country, she said, I want to make offerings to the Buddha. I must invite the Buddha. To invite the Buddha, originally both the king and prince didn't believe in the religion, but he still agreed and prepared to send someone to invite the Buddha and his retinue. Later she said, no need to go. If I pray with devotion, there should be no problem. Then the next day they prepared some food and offerings and began to pray. While praying, the princess thought in her mind this may also be related, not related to lice. Then she prayed for the Buddha to come for the meal offering. During the meal offering, because the local king didn't believe in Buddhism, she hoped the Buddha would manifest various miraculous displays. After thinking this way, the Buddha knew Princess Sumagada's mental state, then, together with his retinue, came to that place through miraculous powers. At that time there was an Arhat, Venerable Pindola Bharadvaja, Venerable Pindola Bharadvaja, one of the 16 Arhats, who could never pass into nirvana. At first he forgot. He was always sewing clothes. Later the Buddha told him, or through clairvoyance observed, that everyone was waiting. He had forgotten this matter, and the time had already arrived. Hurriedly he stuck the needle he was using to sew clothes into that mountain, then flew over himself when he flew over. This mountain also followed the thread, and flew with him after it flew with him on the ground. There were some sentient beings who saw this scene, an Arhat flying over a mountain and a small mountain following him. At this time, there was a pregnant woman who became extremely frightened upon seeing this, as if the mountain had collapsed and fallen on her head due to extreme fear. The pregnant woman miscarried later. When they arrived there, the Buddha already knew the situation was not good and sent Maudgalyayana to meet him. When going to meet him, Maudgalyayana stopped him saying, "Don't bring the mountain down, otherwise it's inappropriate." Looking, he discovered the mountain was also following him, then pushed the mountain back. When they arrived there for the meal offering, the Buddha was displeased with him throughout. On one hand, today, during our meal offering, you didn't follow discipline and were late. This shouldn't be so. Secondly, you have harmed a life. Just now, wasn't it because of your improper behavior that the pregnant woman miscarried? You have, after all, killed a sentient being. Later the Buddha, to punish him, said, "Now, in order to repent for this, in the future you cannot enter nirvana. Until before Buddha Maitreya appears, you cannot enter nirvana." He also agreed in order to repent. Venerable Pindola Bharadvaja is also mentioned in the homage and offerings to the 16 elders. This is a true story. However, now some ordinary people, based on our current imagination, these extremely wondrous, miraculous powers and transformations, these stories for some people, indeed sometimes may be half believed and half doubted. For example, explaining extremely high-tech operations to a farmer, he simply wouldn't believe it. Similarly, because our own conceptual thinking is extremely narrow. In some areas doubts may arise, but actually Buddhas and Bodhisattvas indeed possess such qualities, and because he harmed a life, he will never enter nirvana. Continuously protecting the Dharma, there are also such true accounts. Below it discusses that if sentient beings are not made happy, or if they are harmed for us, this is not Buddhist conduct. One should use one's own body as an analogy or measure. Previously, it seems in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, there is also this using oneself as analogy, do not kill, do not wield weapons. At that time, there was a king who invited the Buddha and monks, offering blood and flesh. When offering blood and flesh, the Buddha did not partake and said to use one's own body as a measure. Absolutely cannot harm sentient beings, cannot strike sentient beings, cannot use weapons. Master Shantideva's view is also like this. What you yourself are unwilling to experience cannot be imposed on other sentient beings. How precious our lives are, other lives are equally precious. When we are attacked by others, such suffering other sentient beings indeed experience the same. So regarding the sources of meat and many of our behaviors, Buddhism's view of compassion indeed cannot be found in any other religion. Everyone must carefully contemplate these principles. When one simultaneously enjoys the blood and flesh of freshly killed sentient beings, while offering blood and meat, praying to Dharma protectors and so forth, those wisdom deities, Dharma protectors who protect Buddhism, are all bodhisattva warriors, so they not only will not enjoy these blood and flesh like what's placed before butchers, they will not partake. Insisting on offering blood and flesh to Dharma protectors is all unnecessary, and they won't even approach one step closer. On the contrary, those who especially love warm blood and flesh, constantly engaged in harming countless sentient beings, powerful demons and spirits of the dark side summoned by negative karma, they will all gather there and enjoy those blood and flesh offerings. Where we should make offerings, if you think offering blood and flesh to Dharma protectors and noble beings, they are not only not pleased, but rather those demons and spirits who love blood and flesh will gather there to enjoy them. Moreover, these demons and spirits will constantly follow those who recite blood and flesh rituals. The Dharma protectors who should follow will not follow. They become increasingly afraid and stay far away. Buddhas and bodhisattvas will likewise stay far away, while those demons and spirits who like them are like when we give cats some meat. They frequently meow and come out occasionally. They do provide some minimal favorable conditions. These demons and spirits still have some abilities. How efficacious? Very good. Is it because I offered blood and flesh to Dharma protectors and Buddhas and bodhisattvas? I hear in southern regions when they offer some fish and meat to demons and spirits each time they catch, especially many fish. So when fishermen go out, they must go to temples to offer blood and flesh. There's this saying, but they frequently harm sentient beings, causing them to suddenly fall ill or become possessed. Such phenomena abound at such times. Those people again recite blood and flesh rituals and make blood and flesh offerings. The demons and spirits seem to again give these people temporary help, because the demons and spirits, in order to obtain some blood and flesh offerings for themselves, they frequently create illnesses for them. Then, each time they fall ill, they make blood and flesh offerings and still receive some benefits. Those who make blood and flesh offerings and the demons and spirits help each other mutually. Inseparably, demons and spirits are like Rakshasa sentries all day, harboring greedy minds for food, wealth, and profit, wandering everywhere, while those who make blood and flesh offerings, because demons and spirits constantly follow them, their previously possessed bodhicitta, renunciation, pure mind, faith, and light of Dharma, everything is completely obscured. Previously your various aspects, actually we humans, when renunciation, faith, and pure perception are gradually obscured, there are indeed some problems. Whether one's conduct is incorrect, past virtues are gradually obscured. Even if the Buddha were flying in the sky, no faith would arise. Even when pulling out sentient beings' intestines, not the slightest compassion arises. At a certain point, sometimes people truly become very frightening. Once we were doing life liberation in a place during the life liberation. There was an old man who was quite bad when we were negotiating prices with the seller. He said very proudly, "Hey, you monastics, it's best not to talk to our son. Our son is very formidable. Even if the Buddha were flying in the sky, he wouldn't develop faith. Even if sentient beings' intestines fell out, he wouldn't develop compassion. Talking to him is useless." He felt extremely proud of this. In Tibetan areas, there's generally this saying, people who have neither faith nor compassion, who commit every evil. Such people are especially pitiable. If we constantly make blood and flesh offerings to demons and spirits without properly generating compassion for sentient beings, gradually one's practice can easily be destroyed. So for our practice to become increasingly advanced, we must. The root of Mahayana Buddhism is compassion. Cultivate your compassion to cultivate compassion. We should try every means to read great masters' works, for example, biographies of Bodhisattva Shantideva and Bodhisattva Asanga biographies, conduct, and teachings of many great masters from Han regions and Tibetan areas. Naturally, compassion will arise in one's mind stream. At the same time, we frequently recite the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, 8 verses of training the mind, the way of the Bodhisattva. I often think about the way of the Bodhisattva. Even if you can't recite it daily, if you carry it with you, compassion will naturally arise in your mind stream. Also now, with the words of my perfect teacher, if all content is really impossible, we now have audio recordings, for example. Frequently reading and reciting the section on generating Mahayana Bodhicitta, compassion, will naturally arise in your mind stream. If you have compassion, other virtues will naturally be present. Like when the sun comes out, its rays are naturally complete. When neither compassion nor faith can arise, it's like evil karmic Rakshasas rushing to battle, red-faced and red-eared, full of rage, rough in temperament, scheming against each other. Such people, relying on the assistance of demons and spirits, think their spiritual power is extraordinary, possessing blessings, and develop arrogance. They don't know that demons and spirits are secretly helping them, thinking they themselves are probably very remarkable. Such people after death can only, like throwing stones, immediately fall into hell, or through negative karma become retinues of especially fierce demons and spirits, or those who wantonly slaughter sentient beings, or be reborn in the world as hawks, wolves, and so forth, daily killing some sentient beings. If you kill sentient beings without compassion, as taught in the sutras, killing brings no good reward, short life, and many illnesses. Future birth in evil realms, experiencing various sufferings, meaning that if you kill sentient beings, there will absolutely be no good future, no good retribution first, is what we commonly teach. Killing causes short life and many illnesses. then your future lives will definitely be in hell, hungry ghost, or animal realms. If you are liberated from the 3 lower realms, you must still experience the remaining portion of that ripened karmic result, even in the human realm. Various sufferings will be experienced. Therefore, for genuine altruistic mind cultivation for self and others, we must absolutely abandon the behavior of killing sentient beings, while through various methods cultivating our great compassionate bodhicitta. Good. We'll stop here.
Om